clutching a bank statement that laid bare my husband's betrayal, buying his mistress a house with my hard-earned money, I collapsed on my kitchen floor, my heart giving out. 3 months later, I woke up to find the calendar had reset. The funds that he thought he'd already spent were back in my account, and I have shifted my focus from sorrow to systematic destruction. The ghost of a massive coronary still squeezed my chest. I gasped, a harsh, jagged intake of air that tasted like burnt toast and expensive espresso. My hands slammed flat onto the cool marble of the kitchen island. They were shaking. I expected to feel the gritty, unwashed grout of the floor where I had just collapsed, my heart tearing itself apart after seeing the rooting numbers. I expected the blinding, white-hot pain shooting down my left arm. Instead, I felt the smooth, polished surface of my countertop. "Claire, you okay? You spaced out for a second." The voice was a splash of ice water. I blinked, the kitchen swimming into focus. The morning sun was violently bright, reflecting off the stainless steel refrigerator. Standing across from me, looking casually flawless in a crisp navy button-down, was David, my husband of 7 years, the man I had just watched kill me with a piece of paper. He pushed a sleek silver pen across the marble. It stopped inches from my fingertips. Next to it sat a stack of neatly stapled documents. "Like I was saying," David continued, his tone practically dripping with that practiced boyish charm he used when he wanted something. "It's just a bridge loan for the startup, temporary liquidity. I just need you to co-sign since your credit score is the one carrying us right now. 6 months tops, and we'll have double the return." I stared at the pen. Then I looked at the date on the digital clock on the oven. October 14th. My breath hitched. October 14th. The day I signed the papers. The day I unknowingly tied my 6-figure tech salary and pristine credit to a mortgage for a quaint 3-bedroom craftsman house in the suburbs. A house that wasn't for his startup. A house that was for Chloe and their 2-year-old son. I had died on January 12th. I knew this with an absolute chilling certainty. The memory wasn't a dream. It was a scar. I remembered the exact weight of the bank envelope. I remembered the smell of the ink. I remembered the devastating, suffocating realization that the man I had supported for half a decade had been siphoning my lifeblood to fund a secret family. "Claire?" David tilted his head. He gave a soft, practiced chuckle. "You're looking at me like I have 2 heads. Just sign on the yellow stickies, babe. I have a meeting at 10. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge across the island and claw his eyes out, even though my fingers twitched with the primal urge to do exactly that. The grief and rage had burned me out in my last moments of life. Now there was only a cold, mechanical clarity settling over me. I was back. I was alive. And the ink on this paper was still dry. I picked up the pen. David's shoulders dropped slightly in relief. He always got his way. He played the struggling, visionary entrepreneur, and I played the supportive, breadwinning wife. It was our dynamic. He relied on my guilt, the guilt of being the one with the stable, high-paying corporate job, while his brilliance was routinely misunderstood by investors. I looked at his hands, soft hands, hands with perfectly manicured cuticles that hadn't seen a day of actual hard labor in his life. I set the pen back down, letting it roll slightly out of reach. No. The word felt foreign in my mouth, heavy, final. David's smile froze. It didn't disappear, it just turned brittle. "No." "What do you mean, no?" "Claire, we talked about this. The seed money is drying up. If I don't secure this bridge loan, the app development stalls." "I mean no, David." I kept my voice perfectly level. If I let even a fraction of my hatred bleed through, he would know something was wrong. I looked over the quarterly projections last night. I'm not comfortable leveraging our primary residence or my credit for a high-risk venture right now. The market is too volatile. "Volatile?" He scoffed, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne, Santal 33, bought with my credit card, made my stomach turn. "Since when do you care about market volatility? You're a software engineer, not a day trader. Babe, you have to trust me. I'm the business guy. My answer is no. I picked up my coffee mug. It was lukewarm. I took a sip anyway, needing the caffeine to ground me. If the app is that promising, you'll find an angel investor. But my signature isn't going on those papers. I turned my back on him and walked toward the sink. It was the hardest physical movement I had ever made. I wanted to watch him. I wanted to see the exact moment the panic set in. But I knew David. He thrived on eye contact, on emotional manipulation. Denying him the engagement was the first cut. Claire, this isn't funny. His voice dropped, losing the boyish charm and adopting a sharp, condescending edge. The paperwork is drawn up. You're embarrassing me in front of my legal team. Then you shouldn't have promised them something that wasn't yours to give, I said quietly, rinsing my mug. I'm going to work. We can talk about this tonight. I grabbed my purse and keys, walking out the front door without looking back. As the heavy mahogany door clicked shut behind me, my knees buckled. I leaned against the brick exterior of my house, taking deep, shuddering breaths. I had done it. I had stopped the massive hemorrhage, but the bleeding had been happening for years. Sitting in the driver's seat of my car, I didn't turn the ignition. I pulled out my phone and logged into our joint banking app. I had never really scrutinized it before. I trusted him. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the car notes from my personal account, and transferred a generous living allowance into our joint account for groceries, dinners, and his day-to-day business expenses. I pulled up the transaction history. I scrolled back. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. Transfer. Oakleaf Holdings, LLC, $3,500. Transfer. Oakleaf Holdings, LLC, $3,500. Point of sale. Buy Baby, $450. Point of sale. Whole Foods, Oakbrook, $280. Oakbrook was 40 miles away. Transfer. Oakleaf Holdings, LLC, $3,500. Oakleaf Holdings. In my previous timeline, the private investigator I hired hours before my death had cracked that shell company in 10 minutes. It was registered to Chloe Miller, his consultant, his mistress, the mother of the child that looked exactly like him. He was paying her rent, with my money, while living in my house, while sleeping in my bed. A dark, humorless laugh scraped its way out of my throat. It filled the quiet cabin of my car. I rested my forehead against the leather steering wheel. Okay, David, I whispered to the empty car. You want to play the businessman? Let's do some accounting. By noon, I was sitting in a windowless conference room in a high-rise downtown. Across from me sat Sarah, a forensic accountant I had found through a ruthless divorce attorney a colleague once recommended. Sarah wore sharp glasses, no makeup, and possessed the bedside manner of a guillotine. I liked her immediately. You don't want to file for divorce yet? Sarah asked, her pen hovering over a legal pad. Not yet, I said. My voice was steady. If I file now in this state, he's entitled to half of the marital assets. He will drag it out, he will drain the accounts to pay his lawyers, and he will claim his business is an asset that offsets the cash he took. I want him with nothing. I want the secret out in the open. And I want him to be the one to burn his own life down trying to cover it up. Sarah's lips twitched in a microscopic smile. A structural collapse. I appreciate the methodology. So, what's the immediate directive? Cut the supply, I said, quietly. For the next 2 hours, we built the firewall. First, my direct deposit. I went into my company's HR portal and rerouted 90% of my paycheck into a new individual account at a completely different bank. The remaining 10%, just enough to make it look like an administrative error or a temporary tax adjustment, would trickle into the joint account. Second, the credit cards. I logged in and reported the physical cards as damaged, requesting new ones be sent to my office address. Then, I quietly slashed the credit limits on the authorized user cards that David carried, from $30,000 down to $1,000. Third, the safety net. I withdrew half of our liquid savings. Legally, I was entirely within my rights. I moved it into a high-yield account solely in my name. When I got home that evening, the house was dark. David was usually waiting with a glass of wine and a sob story when things didn't go his way. Today he was pacing the living room, a half-empty glass of scotch in his hand. "Where have you been?" he demanded the second I walked in. He looked frazzled. The perfect hair was slightly messy. "Work," I lied smoothly, dropping my keys on the console. "Crazy day. We had a sudden server migration." He didn't care about my day. He never did. "My card got declined at lunch today. With the investors, Claire. Do you know how humiliating that is? The waiter comes back, cuts the card in half in his head practically, and tells me it's over the limit. A $500 lunch." "Oh no," I said, injecting just the right amount of mild concern into my voice. I walked past him into the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. "That's strange. Did you check the balance?" "Of course I checked the balance. The limit is 30 grand. He followed me, his face flushing. "I called American Express. They said the primary account holder requested a limit decrease. What the hell is going on, Claire?" I turned to face him, leaning against the counter. "I did. I had to." "You had to?" "I got an alert about some fraudulent activity," I lied, my heart rate steady, slow. "Someone has been trying to run massive charges." I panicked. I had the bank lower the limits across the board until they can issue us new cards and do a full fraud investigation. It takes a few weeks. David froze. The colour drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. A fraud investigation?" "Yes," I said, watching his eyes dart wildly around the kitchen as his brain short-circuited. He was thinking about Oakleaf Holdings. He was thinking about the paper trail. They're looking into all the transfers over the last year. It's crazy, right? The fraud department said they might even need to involve the authorities if the sums are large enough. He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. "Claire, babe, you should have called me. I handle the finances. You know that. I could have cleared it up. It was probably just business expenses getting flagged." "Well, the bank is handling it now," I smiled, a tight, pleasant thing. "Anyway, about the bridge loan for the house." "Don't worry about it," he blurted out, interrupting me. He took a heavy gulp of his scotch. The investors from today? They came through. We don't need to leverage the house." Liar. He had no investors. He had no startup. He had a mistress who was expecting him to close on a house, and now he had absolutely no way to pay for it. "That's wonderful news," I said softly. "I'm so proud of you, David." He offered a weak, sickly smile. "Yeah, thanks, babe. Listen, I have to go make a few calls. Damage control for the credit card thing." He practically sprinted up the stairs to his office. I stood in the quiet kitchen, listening to the muffled, frantic pacing above my head. The game had changed. In my first life, I was the clueless bank. In this life, I was the auditor, and the audit had just begun. Over the next 2 weeks, the financial asphyxiation began to show its effects. David's mood swung violently from aggressive entitlement to desperate fawning. The $3,500 transfer to Oakleaf Holdings bounced on the first of the month. I knew because I watched it happen on the banking app during my lunch break. That evening, he tried to corner me. "Claire, HR messed up your payroll," he said, holding his phone up, displaying the joint account balance. "Only $1,000 dropped in." "I know," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "The company is going through an aggressive restructuring. They've temporarily deferred our bonuses and cut base pay by 40% across the senior engineering team. It's either this or layoffs." 40%? He looked genuinely horrified. "Claire, we have expenses. The business..." "I know, David, but we'll just have to tighten our belts. Good thing your investors came through, right?" I offered him a sympathetic look. "Because I can't cover your business overhead anymore. I can barely cover the mortgage. But my operational costs. You're a smart CEO. You'll figure out how to lean out the operation." I patted his arm, feeling the tense, knotted muscle beneath his shirt. I'm going to take a bath. I'm exhausted. I locked the bathroom door, turned on the water, and sat on the edge of the tub. I pulled out my phone and checked the private investigator's portal. Frank, a grizzled ex-cop I had hired the day after the lawyer, was worth every penny of the retainer. There was a new batch of photos. I scrolled through them. David, standing in the parking lot of an upscale apartment complex. He was arguing with a beautiful, petite blonde woman, Chloe. She looked furious, gesturing wildly with her hands. She was holding a toddler on her hip. The little boy had David's exact curly brown hair. In one photo, Chloe was shoving her phone in David's face, probably showing him a payment declined notification from her landlord. David looked haggard. He was pulling at his hair, looking around frantically. They weren't the happy little secret family anymore. When you build a romance on stolen money, poverty is the ultimate home wrecker. By November, our house felt less like a home and more like a psychological warfare zone. David was fraying at the edges. His perfectly tailored suits were looking slightly rumpled. The expensive haircuts stopped. He started drinking cheap vodka because I stopped replacing the Macallan. He thought I didn't notice him watering down the bottles in the liquor cabinet, but I noticed everything. The pressure from Chloe must have been astronomical. Frank's daily reports painted a picture of a man drowning in dual lives. Chloe was used to a certain lifestyle. David had sold her a narrative. He was a wildly successful entrepreneur, trapped in a loveless marriage with a cold corporate wife, me. But he was just waiting for the buyout to finally leave and marry her. Without my money, the illusion was collapsing. It was a Tuesday night when the first real crack split the facade wide open. I was sitting on the couch, reading a book. David was pacing behind me, a habit that had become constant. His phone buzzed. He snatched it up, his thumbs flying across the screen. He muttered a curse under his breath. "Everything okay?" I asked, not looking up from my page. "Fine," he snapped. Then, catching his tone, he softened it artificially. "Just supply chain issues with the app's server hosts." "Hey, Claire?" "Do you think maybe you could pull a loan from your 401k? I finally looked up. I marked my page and closed the book slowly. "My retirement fund. Just a small one, 50 grand, he said quickly, his hands pleading in the air. "It's an investment in us. The app is so close to launch. If I don't inject capital by Friday, I lose my developers. You know I'd pay it back with interest the second we go public." 50 grand. The exact down payment required for the house he was trying to buy Chloe. The house that the bank had likely just denied him for, since his credit was tied to mine and he had no verifiable income. "David," I said gently, looking at him with wide, innocent eyes. "I can't." "Why not? It's your money." "Because I already took out a loan against it," I said. He stared at me. "You..." "What?" "When my pay got cut, I panicked," I explained, maintaining perfect eye contact. "I took a loan against my 401k to pay off the remaining balance on our cars, just in case I get laid off, so we wouldn't lose them. The money is gone." It wasn't a total lie. I had paid off my car. His car, a leased BMW. I had quietly stopped paying 2 weeks ago. The repo man would be coming for that soon enough. David looked like I had physically struck him. His mouth opened and closed. You paid off the cars? Without consulting me?" "I was protecting our assets, David. You've been so stressed with work. I didn't want to burden you." "Protecting?" He scrubbed his face with both hands, breathing heavily. Okay. What about your sister? Can we ask Emily for a short term?" "Emily just had a baby, David. I am not asking my sister for money." I stood up, feigning indignation. "What is going on with you? If your business is failing, you need to be honest with me." "It's not failing," he yelled, the facade finally breaking. Spit flew from his lips. "You just don't get it. You sit in your safe little cubicle and you have no idea what it takes to build something in the real world. You're suffocating me." He stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the framed photos in the hallway rattled. I walked over to the window and watched him get into his BMW. He peeled out of the driveway, tearing off into the night. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Frank. Target is heading south on I-95. Looks like he's going to the mistress's apartment. Want me to tail? Yes, I texted back. Take pictures if they fight outside. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of the good wine I kept hidden behind the baking supplies. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. The next day, David didn't come home. He texted me a vague apology, claiming he slept at the office because he was working late coding. I knew from Frank's time-stamped photos that he had actually slept in his car in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, presumably after Chloe had kicked him out. When he finally returned on Thursday evening, he looked like a ghost. He walked into the kitchen, dropping his keys on the counter. He didn't look at me. "Claire," he said, his voice hollow. "My car is gone." I looked up from chopping vegetables. "Gone? Like stolen?" "I parked it at the office," he lied smoothly, though his eyes were completely dead. "I came out and it was gone." "Oh my God," I gasped, dropping the knife. "We have to call the police." "No," he said sharply. "No police. I called the leasing company. There was a mix-up with the automatic payments. They repossessed it." "Repossessed?" I let my voice pitch up in horror. "David, how? I transferred you the money for the lease every month before my pay cut." He looked down at his shoes. "I had to divert the funds to the business. It was a calculated risk. I thought I could make it up before they noticed." "So you stole the car money?" I asked, letting the betrayal ring in the air. "I didn't steal it. It's our money," he shouted, cornered and lashing out. "I'm trying to build a future for us." "For us?" I echoed softly. I walked over to the kitchen island. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out a single, glossy 5x7 photograph. I had printed it that morning. It was a picture Frank had taken 2 days ago. David, sitting on a park bench, holding the little boy. Chloe was leaning against him, kissing his cheek. It was a picture of a family, just not mine. I placed the photo face up on the marble counter, right where the loan documents had been a month ago. "Is this the future you're building, David?" I asked. David looked down. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a bomb detonating in a vacuum. He stared at the photograph, his eyes widening until I thought they might roll out of his head. He reached out with trembling fingers, touching the glossy paper as if expecting it to burn him. "Claire," he choked out. He looked up at me, his boyish charm entirely gone, replaced by the terrified stare of a rat caught in a trap. "Claire, I can explain." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had given him since my previous life. "I know you can, David," I said, my voice dripping with absolute freezing calm. "And you're going to have plenty of time to practice that explanation for the judge. Get out of my house." "Claire, wait. Please, just let me explain." David didn't move toward me. He stayed rooted to the spot, his eyes glued to the photograph of his secret family as if it were a venomous snake. His chest heaved. The silence in the kitchen was absolute, save for the low hum of the refrigerator. "Explain?" I tilted my head, keeping my voice dangerously soft. "Explain how you diverted my paycheck to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment across town? Or explain how you've been sleeping next to me for 2 years while raising a toddler with a woman you listed as a corporate consultant?" It was a mistake," he stammered. The slick, confident CEO was gone. In his place was a terrified little boy whose toy had just been snatched away. "A stupid, drunken mistake from a conference in Chicago 3 years ago. She trapped me, Claire, I swear to God. She got pregnant on purpose. I was just trying to do the right thing. By stealing from your wife to fund a double life, I was going to pay it all back," he shouted, his voice cracking. "The app. Once the app launched, I was going to set up a trust for the kid, buy Chloe off, and be done with her. I did it to protect us." I let out a short, dry laugh. It scraped my throat. "You didn't build an app, David. You built a lie. And you used my money as the bricks. I walked over to the pantry, pulled out 3 heavy-duty black trash bags, and tossed them at his feet. They landed with a heavy plastic slap against the tile. You have 20 minutes to pack whatever fits in those bags, I said, checking my watch. After that, I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing. You can't do this. This is my house too. My name is on the deed. Actually, I said, leaning against the counter, it isn't. When we refinanced 2 years ago to get that better rate, my lawyer drafted the quitclaim deed because your credit was dragging us down. You signed away your equity to secure the lower interest. I own this house, David, exclusively. I watched the realization hit him. The color drained from his face completely. He had been so focused on bleeding me dry day to day, he had forgotten the legal safeguards I had insisted on when his startup first began struggling. 20 minutes, I repeated. He packed. He cried. He begged. He threw things upstairs, but he packed. When he walked out the front door, dragging 2 bulging trash bags behind him, he looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only raw, unadulterated hatred. I locked the deadbolt before he even reached the sidewalk. The next 3 months were a masterclass in systematic destruction. I filed for divorce the following morning. My lawyer served him at a cheap motel out on Route 9. By the time David tried to hire his own counsel, he realized his financial reality. His credit cards were maxed or frozen. His bank accounts were empty. The bridge loan he had tried to trick me into signing was dead in the water. Without my cash flow, his relationship with Chloe imploded with spectacular speed. Frank, my investigator, kept me updated purely out of professional amusement. Chloe was a woman who expected a certain standard of living when the rent checks bounced and the Audi was repossessed. Her patience evaporated. She didn't love David the man. She loved David the provider, and he had nothing left to provide. I didn't let the grief consume me. In my first life, the shock had stopped my heart. In this life, the anger fueled a massive creative resurgence. I had spent years pouring all my extra energy and resources into David's phantom business. Now, that energy belonged to me. I took the money I had safely locked away and invested it in something real, something tactile. I bought the high-end camera equipment I had spent years telling myself we couldn't afford because David needed server space. A sleek Sony A72 mirrorless camera, a heavy glass Samyang 24 to 70mm lens, professional lighting rigs, and a DJI Mini 4 Pro drone. I didn't just want to take photos. I wanted to build a network. I started a boutique rental service, supplying top-tier gear exclusively to female photojournalists and independent documentary makers in the city. Women who were out there capturing real stories about social movements and local communities. David, meanwhile, refused to go quietly. He bombarded me with voicemails. Sometimes he was screaming, threatening to ruin my career, claiming he was entitled to alimony. Sometimes he was sobbing, begging for forgiveness, promising he would go to therapy and leave Chloe forever. I didn't listen to them. I plugged the audio files into an advanced AI transcription model I built in my spare time. The AI stripped out the dead air, transcribed his frantic ramblings into text, and categorized them by tone and threat level. I exported the neat, organized spreadsheets directly to my lawyer. It was devastatingly efficient. By March, the eviction notices caught up to him. Chloe officially filed for sole custody of their son, citing David's lack of income and unstable living conditions. She moved out of state, back in with her parents, leaving him entirely alone. He tried to get a job in tech, but the gap in his resume, 4 years of pretending to be a CEO with no actual product to show for it, made him unemployable at the level he believed he deserved. He refused to take entry-level work. His pride was the only thing he had left, and it was starving him. I was finalizing the paperwork for a major equipment rental contract for a local women's advocacy media group when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the AI transcription hit my inbox. Claire, please. I'm outside your office. I just need to talk. Please don't call security. I have nowhere else to go. I looked at the text on my screen. I felt nothing. No pity, no residual love. Just the cold, sterile closure of a wound that had finally healed over. I grabbed my coat and took the elevator down to the lobby. It was raining. A cold, miserable early spring drizzle that soaked into everything. He was sitting on a concrete planter near the glass revolving doors of my corporate building. If I hadn't known exactly what to look for, I would have walked right past him. David looked 10 years older. He was wearing a dark, oversized jacket that looked like it belonged to someone else. His designer jeans were frayed at the hems and stained with grease. He hadn't shaved in weeks, and his hair, once perfectly styled and thick, was greasy and plastered to his forehead by the rain. He looked up as the glass doors slid open. His eyes, heavily bagged and bloodshot, locked onto mine. He stood up, his posture hunched, broken. Claire. His voice was a raspy whisper. It lacked any of the arrogant bass it used to carry. He took a hesitant step forward, stopping when I held up a single hand. That's close enough, David. You're violating the terms of the temporary restraining order. I don't care, he choked out, his chest heaving. The rain mixed with the tears streaming down his face. Arrest me. I don't care anymore. I have nothing, Claire. Literally nothing. I slept in a bus shelter last night. I looked at him, my expression blank. That sounds like a logistical problem, not a me problem. Please, he sobbed, his knees actually buckling. He caught himself on the edge of the wet concrete planter, practically falling to the ground in front of me. I was out of my mind. The pressure, the stress of the startup. She took advantage of me. I ruined my life. I ruined the only good thing I ever had. You. He reached out, his dirty, trembling fingers brushing the hem of my trench coat. I took a deliberate step backward, out of his reach. Don't touch me, I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise of the city traffic like a scalpel. I'll do anything, he wept, looking up at me from the wet pavement. He was fully crying now, loud, ugly, gasping sobs that drew the eyes of passing pedestrians. He didn't care about the humiliation. He was past it. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll get a job. I'll work at a grocery store. I'll clean houses. Just let me come home. Please, Claire, I'm begging you. I'm so hungry. I have nothing. I stared down at the man who had effectively killed me in another lifetime. I looked at the hands that had casually slid a pen across a marble island, expecting me to sign away my future to house his mistress. You don't miss me, David, I said quietly, the absolute truth ringing clear in the damp air. You miss my money. You miss the safety net. You miss the warm house and the paid-off cars and the meals that appeared in the fridge. You miss the host. But the parasite killed the host. And now you're starving. He shook his head frantically, wiping his nose with the back of his dirty sleeve. No, I love you. I swear I love you. You love what I provided, but I don't provide for you anymore. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'm calling building security. If you are still here in 60 seconds, I'm pressing charges. Claire, please, have a heart, he screamed, his voice cracking violently. I'm the father of a little boy. I can't even afford to see him. My life is over. You made your choices, I said, turning my back on him. Now, you get to live them. I didn't run. I walked slowly, calmly, back through the sliding glass doors. The lobby was warm and smelled of expensive coffee. The security guard at the front desk looked at me, then pointed toward the window. Everything all right out there, Ma'am? Do you need me to remove that guy? I looked back through the glass. David was still on his knees in the rain. He had his hands pressed against his face, his shoulders shaking violently as the cold downpour soaked him to the bone. People were stepping widely around him, casting disgusted glances at the man breaking down on the pavement. He was completely, utterly ruined. Yes, please, I told the guard, my voice light and entirely unbothered. He's trespassing. I turned and walked toward the elevator banks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from a local filmmaker. She needed to rent the Sony A72 and the Flycam for a weekend shoot documenting a women's empowerment rally downtown. I smiled, typing back a quick, enthusiastic confirmation. The elevator dinged, the polished steel doors opening to carry me up. I stepped inside, pressing the button for my floor. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the rainy street and the pathetic kneeling figure outside, I took a deep breath. My chest didn't hurt. My heart beat strong, steady, and entirely my own. I was alive, and I had never felt so free. The rain eventually washed away the marks he left on my pavement, just as time and boundaries washed him out of my life. I didn't watch him get dragged away by security. I didn't check the police reports. I didn't need to. I had already moved on, and in doing so, I had finally stepped into the life I was always meant to live, one built entirely by my own hands, for my own future. If you found satisfaction in seeing justice served and a toxic chapter finally closed, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an update on our latest stories. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that you are the author of your own life. Drop a comment below. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about setting boundaries? See you in the next one.